we have a strong law right now, and we are willing to see if including the word consent would be good for the victim and not a risk to, light the law, obviously.
50 men, and between them more than 400 years in prison. But the children of Cynthia Pelicot say the sentences were too lenient. Dominique Pelicot got 20 years and prosecutors sought much, much longer. The mass rape trial has captured global attention, but will it lead to a change in the law or indeed have a lasting impact on the attitudes towards the nature of consent in France? We can speak now to the French journalist and activist Cynthia Illouz, who was in Avignon yesterday and is back in Paris now. Good morning to you, Cynthia.
Hi, good morning.
Give us a sense of not only how French society has reacted to this trial, but what the reaction has been since the guilty verdicts and since those sentences have been handed down.
Yes, yesterday, as you mentioned, the sentences were less severe than the prosecution requests. What we will have to see is if they make an appeal. So the conversation is really not over about the topic. Clearly, we are thinking about the sentences, and here in France, those sentences are quite more severe than usually about sexual assaults and rapes. And I discussed with one lawyer of the guilty men, and he told me if the feminists were not so present during this trial, and the journalists also, he considered that the sentence would have been less important. And in the other way, of course, feminists don't really understand why the sentences are less severe than expected from the prosecutor. It's really bringing, once again, the topic in the forefront of the conversation here in France, because also what is interesting to witness is for the first time, also men are reacting to sexual assault case that is not usually the case in France.
Writing in the Times today, Janice Turner, who went and sat through the court proceedings, has written that she felt French culture enabled these men. So essentially, men felt that they could get away with this in French culture. First of all, do you think that's right? And if you do you think that is going to change as a result of this?
I can say that rape culture is unfortunately everywhere, not in France only. We can talk about the rape culture. It's meaning that we are talking about a range of acts, including sexism, to more aggravated acts, such as what we call here feminicide. The women are being killed because they are women. This is something that we can find, unfortunately, in many, many countries. And when we talk about this rape culture, we can also talk about another phenomenon, what is it named the victim blaming phenomenon, the way we try to treat the victim. Here, Giselle has been, a little bit different because she gathered so many evidence to come into a trial. But this is not the case of other victims, and usually they are not really believed in front of the justice.
What about the issue of consent? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion about there is not a specific element of consent within French law regarding rape. I mean, that has to change, doesn't it?
We're not so sure about it for, all the feminists, but also all the lawyers are discussing this point, because we have a strong law right now, and we are willing to see if including the word consent would be good for the victim and not a risk to, light the law, obviously. So this is not sure. It's going to be a change, but for sure it's a discussion, and law professional, lawyer, judge have really to be careful about it. And what needs to be done is stronger the law and not to, get it in a more light way, because as we see, the sentences could be less severe.
So just explain for our audience why people have concerns about putting the word consent into French law.
They are a little bit afraid of the victim should have been the one to say that she not giving her consent. What could happen is change the perspective of the law, and this is why the lawyer has not really decided yet what's better for victim, because obviously this is what we are looking for, a better justice for sure. But for now, there's still ongoing discussion about it.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I have teenage girls, and there is much discussion in schools about consent. When I was at school and we had sex education, consent was never even mentioned. But now it's really important as part of the education of young people. Is that a discussion amongst young people, amongst educators wider in France about the issue of consent? Because it feels like some of the men almost used a defence in this of, oh, well, her husband gave consent, or I assumed she'd given consent. It felt like they didn't really understand what consent was.
Yeah, clearly in this case, we witnessed that, because most of the men say they received the consent of the husband, Dominique Pelicot. So this clearly a word that needs to be explained. And you mentioned, and the young generation, clearly we need to talk more about those topics to our kids and youngs. But still here in France, it's a little bit complicated, because we have a conservative politics that thinking that they are all talking about the woke culture, and a little bit afraid about the education, sexual education could be around Kama Sutra. So for now, we have only 3 courses that are mandatory in the schools, but they're not really done for the reason I just mentioned. And clearly the discussion about consent is very important. I'm not sure those men don't understand exactly what consent means, but for sure we need to broaden it a little bit in the forefront of the discussion. And also when we're talking about the definition of consent or no in the law, few are mentioning that it would be terrible for a relationship if ever we need a contract to have sexual relationship.
Is it right that there's no actual age of consent in France?
No, there is now under 15 years old, consent cannot be okay. The law changed a few years ago, so it's implying that a relationship under this age is assault and rape.
I was quite shocked yesterday to see images outside the court of one of the defence lawyers taunting the crowd, calling the men and women outside who were supporting Gisèle Pelicot hysterical and swearing at them. Has that surprised people in France?
Yes, obviously in this case, we witnessed the reaction of so many lawyers. And when we were talking about the rape culture, this is clearly one of them. When you hear the words history girls, etc., he was trying to defend himself, because the girls are saying, women are saying, shame on you, you should be ashamed, etc. And he was proudly say that his client gonna be free this night. And I know a lot of these women who were in front of the court. Most of them are former victims themselves. They really gathered to show that they are willing to change the narrative around those topics. So it was really hard to witness yesterday.
Cynthia, it's really good for you to speak to us this morning and for us to get an insight into the conversations that are already underway in France. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
That is French journalist and activist Cynthia Illouz, who was in Avignon yesterday, is now back in Paris, speaking to us really about reaction within French society to something that is just so deeply shocking. And the more you read and the more you understand, the more shocking it becomes.